very warm welcome back. It's a Friday morning and you're tuning to Expresso on your feel-good breakfast show. Now, we know that Africa is a rich continent, rich in culture, rich in diversity. And even though we are all trying to explore more of our roots, unfortunately, there are still many stories that are seldomly told. Now, a new documentary called Mapungubwe, Echoes in the Valley, is not only shining a light on the history of African civilization, but also raises the bar in terms of historical visual documentation. Take a look at this.
Long before they came to the hills, our footsteps shaped the landscape, tamed the eland, the zebras, and the hyenas along with the gemsbok. We rode the wind and silenced the hurricane. Look at us, we have been here before.
Many people think that Mapungubwe just mushroomed on its own. It is a pinnacle, the apex of development or civilization.
Oh, exciting stuff indeed. And joining us on the show this morning is Nhlanhla Tetra, and we got Tariq Millet as well. Good morning to you, gentlemen, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks.
Good morning. Thank you.
Nice to be here.
Nhlanhla, I'll start off with you first, and
Sure.
I want you to tell me, as an acclaimed historical documentarian, why you think it was so important to tell the story of Mapungubwe.
Mapungubwe is one of the stories that needs to be told, but I think just to take you back. I'm mainly a researcher, you know, and a storyteller, not necessarily a filmmaker. I'm there by default. But I like to amplify this kind of stories. I mean, this story has been in the pipeline since I worked for Freedom Park, actually. That's where I met Mandla Dube, who's the director, you know. And you'll see in the series that it's not a story that we just did in 2016, you know. It's been a 10-year journey, you know. So I do stories now, I have a son, you know, a teenage son. So I do stories for them as well, you know. They don't know about that history. So I like to bring that history into...
Yeah. And it's important to make sure that that history is accurately told. And I guess that's why over this 10-year period, while you were making this film, there's been so many different people involved, from archaeologists. We've had South African orators, academics, writers, historians, all involved. Why would you say, Tariq, is it so important to have the viewpoint of so many different individuals?
I think my starting point is, if I go to any museum in South Africa, and it's talking about pre-colonial African history, it's simply archaeology. There's no museum that you can go to see the social history of Africans in any of our museums. Our universities are more Euroversities than universities. So for us, oral history, the history of naming, genetics, archaeology, anthropology, history, genealogy, all of these disciplines, interdisciplinary approach is important to being able to bring up from the underground what should be above ground. We have a marvelous history prior to colonialism.
And I think you touch on a very important point there, because there are a lot of people who'll be watching it from that point of view with a very keen eye about how this addresses the issue of the story, the African story as told by colonial rule, as told by the victors of history. So how far does this documentary go in addressing that?
One of the main points we try to focus on is, as Tariq was mentioning, all these academics. Our history has always been told in that kind of prism, but in this documentary we let people tell the story. You know, people who lived in Mapungubwe, the descendants of Mapungubwe. That's why we call it Echoes in the Valley, because sometimes those voices are not amplified, you know. So we're trying to give a space. I mean, there's a lady, actually, one of the characters there, who said our history, because you know, academics will say, where's the record? You know, show us where's the record.
The proof,
But I found out, this was a learning curve for me as well, you know, that our totems, our own history, this is genealogy, you know, totems are like that, you know, those are the records, you know, that's one of the things. And I like to commend as well SABC, especially the team that work with us. They were so understanding, you know, when we put ideas forward. So yeah, I mean, for instance, we planning to print a booklet because we just don't want this story to end on television.
Yeah.
You know, we need to take it across the schools, and so
Yeah.
that most people can learn
Start
about
teaching
this. you
our
know.
history from our
Yeah.
point of view so we can tell our stories.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
thank you very
your
much.
cameraman was asking, Mapungubwe, what's that? You know?
I mean, that's shocking, Prosper. That's shocking. Don't ever ask that question again. But thank you so much, gentlemen, for being here and for taking that stance of telling our stories. And of course, you at home can catch all the history and significance of Mapungubwe echoes in the valley on Sunday at 9:30 p.m. And that you can catch on SABC 3.